Focusing in on the blood. So what are the components of the blood? Well, you have both white blood cells and red blood cells. Remember, white blood cells consist of both lymphocytes and phagocytes. Red blood cells, their official name is erythrocytes. Remember, they're needed to transport oxygen. You've also got a jelly-like substance known as plasma and small fragments of cells called platelets, and we'll talk lots about their various roles a bit later on in this video. The blood is responsible for transporting oxygen from the lungs to respiring cells, carbon dioxide from respiring cells to the lungs, various nutrients such as glucose and amino acids, hormones, urea, which is a breakdown product of proteins from the liver to the kidneys where it's excreted. Kind of repeating ourselves a little bit, but just talking about the role of the plasma now. So the plasma, the jelly-like substance, transports hormones from where they're made glands to the organs that they act upon, their target organs, nutrients such as glucose from the small intestine to cells, urea from the liver to the kidneys, carbon dioxide from respiring cells to the lungs. So what I've just mentioned there is specifically the role of plasma, whereas before I was talking more generally about the role of blood as a whole. Something you might be less familiar with is tissue fluid. This is fluid found between capillaries and the cells. It effectively bathes the cells. How is tissue fluid formed? Well, the artery end of the capillary has a higher pressure compared with the venous, the vein end. The capillary walls are leaky. Water and small molecules are forced out of the blood due to this pressure difference. Larger molecules such as proteins remain in the blood. If we consider the difference in the composition between tissue fluid and plasma, you'll find that tissue fluid contains no large proteins, no red blood cells, unlike plasma, which may contain both of these things. How does water leave the tissue fluid? Well, water moves by osmosis from an area of high water potential in the tissue fluid to an area of low water potential in the capillaries across a partially permeable membrane. What is the lymphatic system? Well, it's a system of vessels containing the substance lymph. Lymph contains water, fatty acids, and lymphocytes. Areas of the lymphatic system where you find nodes are known as lymph nodes. These contain a high concentration of lymphocytes. Remember that the lacteals found the small intestine play an important role in forming lymph. They aid fat absorption. Focusing in on red blood cells, so as I've already said, red blood cells are responsible for transporting oxygen around the body. That oxygen binds to a pigment known as hemoglobin present on the red blood cells. The red blood cells have lots of adaptations to increase how much oxygen they transport. They have a characteristic biconcave disc shape. This increases their surface area to volume ratio, maximizing the amount of oxygen that can be transported. They have no nucleus. This provides more space for hemoglobin. They're flexible, which enables them to squeeze through blood capillaries, and they have a thin membrane which provides a short diffusion distance. Have you ever wondered why athletes like to train at high altitude? It's because of the following. At high altitude, you find there's less oxygen present. To compensate, more red blood cells are produced by our body. More red blood cells means that there's more hemoglobin, meaning that more oxygen can be transported by our blood. More oxygen is great for athletes because it means that more respiration can take place, more energy released, and more muscle contraction. Now we're answering the question, how are blood groups determined? This is due to the presence of various antigens. Remember, these are small proteins which stick out, in this case from the outside of the red blood cells. There are two types of antigen, A and B. This allows us to have 4 different blood groups, A, B, AB, and O. As you would expect, someone with blood group A has A antigens on their red blood cell surface, B has B antigens, AB has both A and B antigens, O has neither A or B antigens. There are no antigens sticking out of the red blood cells of group O. Now remember that small proteins known as antibodies will attach onto these antigens, so let's consider those various blood groups in turn to work out what type of antibodies will respond to those antigens. So for blood group A, they have antigen A sticking out of their red blood cells, therefore antibodies found in blood group A people will be anti-B antibodies. For blood group B people with B antigens poking out of their red blood cells, this time they'll have anti-A antibodies present in their blood. This means that they'll attack any red blood cells with A antigens sticking out from them. AB this time, blood group AB will have AB antigens poking out. Based on the fact they have both A and B antigens, it means that they have neither anti-A or anti-B antibodies. And then what about blood group O? Well, we know this time there are no antigens sticking out, so this time this person's antibodies will react to both A and B. So they'll have anti-A and anti-B antibodies. So what does that actually mean in terms of blood donation? Sometimes people need a blood transfusion for a variety of reasons. Let's consider which blood group would count as the universal donor. So the universal donor means that this blood can be given to anyone regardless of their blood group. Well, that universal donor blood group must be O. The reason for that is because they have no antigens on their red blood cells, meaning that when their blood is given to other people, there's nothing for the antibodies in that other person's blood to respond to, hence why blood group O is known as the universal donor. Now let's consider which blood group is known as the universal recipient. It means that this person can receive blood from anyone. Well, in this case, it's going to be the person with blood group AB. The reason for that is because their red blood cells already have both A and B antigens poking out from them, meaning it doesn't matter where the blood comes from, they won't have antibodies which attack because they don't attack their own cells. So blood group AB is known as the universal recipient. If the wrong blood is given to a person, a process called agglutination occurs, which is when the antibodies attach to the antigens on the red blood cells, causing the red blood cells to clump together. This is very dangerous due to the blockage of blood vessels that may occur. Unfortunately, blood can never be frozen because it causes the red blood cells to burst, and therefore the blood is effectively useless.